Are you sick of waking up with anxiety and regret after drinking? I get it. I was a weekend binge drinker, fooling myself into believing I was detoxing all week, only to retox every weekend and live completely outside of alignment with my values. As a former personal trainer who cared about health, that disconnect pushed me to finally make a change. I'm Maureen Bankovich, and this is Sober Fit Life, a podcast where we get real about alcohol, share powerful stories, and learn from wellness experts so you can thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. Let's get sober fit. Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI. You guys, welcome to another episode of Sober Fit Life. I am so thrilled to introduce you all to someone very special to me, my niece, Lisa Cordasco. And Lisa is not just my niece, but she is an amazing therapist. I guess I'm going to say that word. But Lisa has been working in behavioral health for over a decade and is one of the co-founders of Rewired Path Counseling and Consultation in New Jersey. She found her calling in this field after building a foundation in her own recovery, and she's been helping others heal ever since. Lisa is a licensed clinical social worker and clinical alcohol and drug counselor with a master's from Fordham University. Beyond her expertise in addiction, she's trained in complex trauma, grief, and the mind-body connection, which we all know is so important. Her approach is definitely compassionate yet firm, and I know this, being her aunt, and she's all about finding balance and growth. Outside of work, Lisa is an adventurer at heart. She loves sunrise yoga, nature, creative expression, and traveling the world with her daughter, spouse, and even their pet pug, and sometimes her Aunt Maureen. She is someone who truly cherishes life's little moments, and I cannot wait for you all to hear Lisa's perspective today. So, Lisa, I am so happy to have you here. I am just really excited for you to share your story and your knowledge and how you got to where you are now from where you were.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you. And, what an honor and what a special privilege to have been able to watch you grow all of this and really create this wonderful platform as part of your own journey. It's really inspiring. So it means a lot for me to be able to be here with you.
Thank you. It means so much for me to have you here too. I watched, you were younger going through your journey, and then I went through it later. And you've been such an inspiration to me. And then we've connected over this, which is honestly, I guess your aunt was too busy drinking and partying to notice what was going on. And it wasn't until I removed alcohol from my life that I see so many people differently, and you and I have this connection, and I really value it. So I would love it if you would share with our audience just a little bit about your story and, how you got to where you are in your incredible career of helping others. And I love the name of your counseling, Rewired Path Counseling and Consultation. So can you, give us a little overview of Lisa and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you just spoke to, I mean, our family has such a long history of struggles with substance use, with depression, with anxiety, with generational trauma, right? Like most people's families, and where my story might be a little bit different than some of the other people that you've had on here as guests. Is that I did come into recovery at a really young age. Now, of course, I look at that as such a blessing.
Yes.
I feel so incredibly grateful and fortunate that I came into recovery very young. I got clean when I was 19 years old, right before my 20th birthday. So I've never had a legal drink had plenty of illegal ones.
Right.
You know, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's something you don't hear all that often. But it was still a really long journey. I started using substances when I was about 12 years old. And I started with alcohol, and
Hmm.
I progressed really quickly to much bigger and badder substances because that wasn't doing the trick anymore. And so what precipitated me finding recovery was really such incredible desperation, and such hopelessness and brokenness. By the time I was 19, I was addicted to heroin and cocaine.
Hmm.
I was an IV user before I even left high school, and all the while really working very hard to maintain this image of being okay. I
Yeah.
was a straight A student, while addicted to heroin.
Right.
Um, it was not an easy mask to keep up. And eventually it started to crumble. And kind of towards the end, all of those things that I didn't think would happen started to happen. Getting arrested, and your dad, my grandfather, having to come to the rescue, right, and help me, and
Yeah.
I ended up in a lot of really unsafe situations. But I really didn't care. I mean, I had so much disregard for my own well-being by that point.
Mm.
I had so much self-hatred. That was a big part for me of what fueled my substance use, was just really not caring about myself and not being able to see the good or the hope or the possibility. And also so much shame. I mean,
Yes.
I was terribly ashamed of the way I was living, of everything I was doing. And I tried so hard to like hold on to that, maintaining that secret, right? Or maintaining this disguise of
That's
normalcy when it was just so obvious that I wasn't okay, you
that's
know?
so exhausting, isn't it, too? Like trying to maintain
Oh,
that mask and that normalcy
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's excruciating. It's so exhausting. So I think kind of by the end, there's almost like that relief in everything just exploding and coming apart like it did, where it was
Hmm.
like, on one hand, so humiliating and embarrassing and shameful, right? And then on the other hand, just that relief of like, okay, well, now it's finally out there, right? Now
Right.
I can finally stop pretending to be okay when I'm really not okay. And yeah, and so I ended up going to treatment, and I had a positive experience there, but there were still a lot of things that I wasn't ready to change about behaviors. And so I did, have a little bit more research to do, right?
Sure.
Of
Yeah.
trying things my way, and eventually then did kind of come to this place of realizing that there were so many more things that I needed to look at and to change, in order to be well. And I was afraid. I
Yeah.
was really afraid to look at those patterns. I was really afraid to look at myself. But when that just pain became so great, right, I was willing to do it, and so that's what I did, right. So I
Yeah.
started on
When the
my.
what do they say? When the pain of changing finally
Mhm.
becomes greater than the pain of staying the same.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And that's when we kind of come to that crossroad of like, okay, what am I going to do here? And I am a member of 12-step program, and 12-step program has definitely saved my life and changed my life, and given me the tools that I've needed to learn how to live. You
Yeah.
know, um, and again, where I guess my experience and my story of coming to recovery at such a young age might be different than some of the other people you have on here, is I didn't have an identity or a life to really recover, right? It was really about creating it,
Mm.
right? Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
But that gives you so much. empathy, everything you just said, for all the people you now help,
Mm.
all that you went through. And even, as you said, where you still had to figure things out on your own and do more research, and until, so you have so much empathy for the people that you're helping, because I'm sure that happens
Oh yeah.
a lot. And did you ever think, as you were in recovery, that you would then become a therapist and help others do exactly what someone helped you do?
Initially, no. I mean, it's funny in your email that you had sent me with, kind of just what to expect with this. One of the questions you had put in there was about kind of what brought me to working in this field, and I was reflecting on that because, a lot of times I kind of tell that story of like, oh, it was this like serendipitous thing, right? Or maybe it was like a higher power moment. I had, I don't know, probably somewhere around 6 months or so clean,
Mm-hmm.
and just had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And I knew I wanted to go back to college, because I had done a year of college, and I had messed up my scholarship, and really
Yep, I remember that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I knew I wanted to go back to school. I knew I wanted to do something, right? But I wasn't sure what, and I started kind of looking at one of the local universities. I ended up doing my undergraduate in social work at Georgia University, which is a small, at the time it was still a women's college. Now it's co-ed. But I was looking at their website and kind of just like looking at different majors and like, what do I want to do? What can I see myself doing? What would be fulfilling? Right? Because I was trying to figure out what my purpose would be,
Oh yeah.
and I mean, that's
Can I
something we could,
stop you there? Like, isn't that a
yeah,
part of, drinking and doing drugs? I know for me,
yes,
I really didn't know who I was. I couldn't
yes,
have children. I felt very much like I didn't have a purpose. Like, is
yes,
that a theme that you see so
absolutely.
much? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. I mean, we could just go on and on about
Right.
talking about that piece of it, and that piece of recovery and healing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is finding purpose. And so that's what I was looking for, and I had no idea what that was going to look like, and I stumbled across social work, and I was like, what the heck is this? I have no idea what that is, never heard
Yeah.
of it before, and I started kind of reading about it, and it spoke to me. Um, but I think the other piece of that I don't often talk about is it spoke to me with a familiarity that I don't think entirely initially came from a healthy place. Um,
Interesting.
because my whole life, I was always very sensitive and very empathetic, to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was also always very critical of myself. But when it came to other people, I was really good at being compassionate and being loving and being a caretaker. Um, and I learned that at a really early age to focus on other people as a way to avoid and run from what I was experiencing in myself.
Right.
So I think that social work really kind of spoke to that natural skill that I had my whole life. Which again, initially didn't really come from the healthiest of places. It was like, oh, do for others, help other people, give to others, be of service to. I can do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm really good at that. I've been, doing that since I was little.
But I think it
Um,
also really helps, when you're in recovery, or for me, removing alcohol, in recovery from alcohol, helping others helps me stay in
yes,
it. And like, oh yeah, that's right. This is why, this is why I don't want to drink anymore. And this is what I want to help other people with. So there,
hmm,
even though you think you might initially have gotten into it for maybe not so altruistic reasons, it's obviously grown from that, because you're
absolutely.
phenomenal at what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was such a huge part of where my healing journey had to continue and evolve from
Hmm.
there, right? So we do get that messaging as part of recovery, and being of service to other people and being connected to other people is so important in healing.
Yes.
But there has to be balance, right? So much of my life existed in these extremes in my behavior patterns. Right? Everything was very black and white,
Yeah.
all or nothing. And so I had to figure out how to have like a sense of balance there. So, okay, how do I show up for other people and be compassionate and empathetic towards other people And how do I also take care of myself,
Yeah.
right? And have boundaries and treat myself with the same respect and compassion that I would treat other people with.
Yeah. I've
So that was
experienced
something
that
that came
too.
along the way.
I
Yeah.
get that, like, because you can get easily emotionally dysregulated, taking care of everybody else and forgetting all the
Mm,
structure and the habits and the things that you learned early in recovery that you need to do to take
yeah,
care of yourself. And then, all of a sudden you're too focused on taking care of others and you're not, putting back into your own well. So yeah, I think that happens a lot in caretaker syndromes, but also
definitely.
therapists, coaches. Yeah, I can relate to that. That's interesting. I
Absolutely.
never heard that part of your story.
It's the wounded healer thing, right?
Right.
So many of us that are drawn towards healing professions, it comes from that place of our own woundedness, right? And again, that can be a beautiful thing, right? Of being
Mm-hmm.
able to really transmute that pain, right? And to turn it into a purpose and a connection. But when that's not in a place of balance, when that's left unchecked, that can be really painful and really
Yeah.
damaging, right? Um,
Yeah, I know
you
over
know,
the
and
years your things that you do to take care of yourself has evolved, and I definitely
mm,
want to get to that because I'm so interested in that. I want to like flip to another topic for a minute because I think it
yeah,
all relates. All the work you've done on trauma and grief and the mind body connection,
yeah,
because you pursued additional training in trauma and grief and the mind body. How has that helped you shape your approach to healing? And what is the importance of addressing trauma in recovery?
absolutely. Yeah, and that's a perfect kind of segue and connection there.
Hmm.
So, as I kind of continued in my studies and in my profession, I started really learning about complex trauma and really understanding how that shows up and how that showed up for me. And so, where complex trauma is a little bit different than what we typically think of when we talk about PTSD, right? So, a lot of times when you say PTSD or trauma, people think of these really big singular events, right?
Right.
So, life is pretty good, and then all of a sudden, this big thing happens that just rocks your world and is really
Hmm.
shocking, devastating, and pushes you outside your limits. Complex trauma, on the other hand, is where somebody's experienced something repetitively, where it becomes their normal, right? So, really good examples of that are growing up in a home environment with a parent that abuses substances, or growing up in a home environment with a parent that is mentally ill, or where there's abuse or domestic violence between your parents and caregivers, or growing up in a community where there's violence or a lack of safety, or experiencing neglect, or being in your own domestic violence relationship for an extended period of time, right?
Right.
So these things where people are exposed to this repetitive distress, that their system doesn't know how to tolerate, but has to adapt to learn how to tolerate because there's no escape from it.
And
Right.
those
And so,
adaptions tend to be not healthy, right? Typically.
correct. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Correct. Right. So, a lot of times, one of the biggest ways that people kind of adapt to those things is by disconnection from their self. So, that could be disconnecting from their physical body, that could be disconnecting from their own emotions. Right, that caretaking behavior that we spoke about a
Hmm.
moment ago. That's a big way that you see complex trauma show up for a lot of people. Right, it's a way to avoid dealing with the distress that's happening within ourselves to focus on others. Right, but it creates that disconnection.
Right.
Right, now I don't even know who I am, or what I feel, or what I want, or what I need, or what my boundaries are. Right.
And the complex trauma, I mean, from what my lay understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, it's sort of like
Yeah.
the frog in the boiling water. Like it's happened
Mm.
over time and
Yes.
for so long that they don't really know. You don't really know
Yes.
that that's what's happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't even tell you how many of my clients come in initially, and when I even start to use the word trauma, they're like, "Well, that's not, it wasn't that bad."
Yes.
Right? And then as we kind of talk about those things more and really begin to explore it, it's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, maybe maybe it was that bad, right? Maybe it really did impact me.
Because
Maybe
that
it
was
is
their
okay to
normal.
acknowledge that." Yes.
right? That was their
Totally.
normal. And so they would think maybe everybody else is going through this. And why should I reach out? And that fear of vulnerability too, and shame, right? It's all wrapped up in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So I started kind of learning about these things and really understanding the way that that affects people. And, I'm a bit of a brain geek, right? So I love
Yeah, I love
really
that.
understanding the brain and the nervous system. And I started to kind of delve more into understanding that, why? Like, why do these symptoms show up for people? Why do we react in these ways? What creates all of this? And, it's really fascinating stuff.
Hmm.
And it's understanding how like complex our bodies and our brains are and how amazing they are in helping us to survive different
Yes.
situations and to adapt, and how that can really kind of backfire on us in other ways, right? But the hopeful piece is that all of that is stuff we can work with, right? So the you mentioned the name of the practice, my practice that I co-own with my two partners, Rewired Path. Part of the reason why we chose that name is it's a little bit of a nod to the neurobiology piece, right? So, yeah, we've created these neural pathways and they're always going to be there, right? But we can rewire those
Yes.
things, right? We can create new pathways. There is neuroplasticity. We can heal, we can grow, we can change.
Yeah, that geeky science thing runs in our family.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it until I started looking into drinking. Why is it so
Mm.
hard for me to stop? And
Yeah.
understanding neuroplasticity, neural pathways,
Yeah.
and that I could make new neural pathways. But
Yeah.
one of the things and this again, Lisa is so much more experienced. I'm just a coach, but that's why I love to dig into her really smart brain. But neural pathways. So one of the things I've learned, but I'd love for you to talk a little more about this. So if you've been drinking for a long time,
Mm.
those are pretty deep, wide, strong neural
Absolutely.
pathways you've associated with
Yes.
trauma, stress, even reward. And when
Hmm.
you start a new one, I tell my clients it's like a little baby bike path, and it's like
Yep.
real tiny. Now the other ones, the more you stay away from the maladaptive behavior, drinking or drugs or whatever it is, they start to sort of grow over, but they're always there, right? Is that
Yes.
correct? And
Correct.
that's
Yeah,
why if you go
exactly.
back to the substance, the behavior, they light up like a Christmas tree, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that's so important. Because most people come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, like going, "Well, I would just really like to be a now and again
Mm.
drinker," and they've
Yeah.
already gone beyond. They've been drinking, and they don't have an off switch, and they're using it for all kinds of things. And they say, well, "I just want to go back to this." Like, could you speak to that?
Yeah. And it's so hard, right? Because I think
Hmm.
a lot of times, people do end up having to do that experiment and kind of really come to that place of understanding that that's just not possible, because of exactly what you spoke to. I mean, you said a moment ago just a coach, right? But you explained that perfectly. You explained
Thank
that
you.
beautifully. That's the exact same way that I explain that to my clients. If it's that 5 lane highway versus that dirt road, and that highway is always going to be there, right? And we have to kind of come to a place of accepting that and recognizing what that means, right? But that can be so hard for so many people because
Yeah.
of all of the pressures and all of the things that people might still think that they're missing out on or that
Right.
they're getting from it. And I think that's really where it is learning how to replace it with other things, right? That
Yes.
little bike path or that little dirt road, really beginning to carve that out and see, okay, yeah, what are these other things that can really begin to meet that need, that I've been trying to meet with the substance. And so, kind of back to that idea of the complex trauma for
Hmm.
people with complex trauma, a lot of that comes down to attachment, right? So, especially when people have experienced trauma in their family of origin or in their home environment, and they haven't had those emotional needs met for whatever reasons, right? And a lot of times, most times, right, it's not that our families intend to do that, right? It's
Right.
just that they have their own stuff that they're dealing with.
Yes. Generational.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And so, let's say, for example, well, you know what? I'll use myself, right? I'll speak to my own story in that, right? So, both of my parents have struggled with their own maladaptive relationship with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their way of coping with their own stress. And my dad struggled severely with his mental health issues. And my mom used work as a way to cope with dealing with him and dealing with um, the pain and the toxicity in their relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
so, there wasn't anybody available to provide me with the skills to deal with my emotions in the way that I needed growing up, right? Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how.
Right. They were dealing
Um,
with their own in different ways. Yeah, that weren't
yeah,
healthy behaviors.
exactly, right? So there's a lack of this experience of healthy attachment. And,
I see.
human beings, we are social creatures. We thrive off of connection and
Mm-hmm.
attachment. And that is our first line of defense, right, against the world is connection, is attachment,
Yes.
right? When a child's distressed, what do? They cry out, right? They open their arms, they look for somebody to help. And, if we get those experiences early on of not getting the help that we need or not having that attachment or attunement, we look for it somewhere else. And substances do the trick,
They
right?
do
So
do
we
the trick,
experience.
don't they? Right? Like
Hmm.
let's just talk about them because you can't just say they're bad. We know they're
Right.
quote unquote bad, but the truth is they do depress your central nervous system in the case of
Yeah.
alcohol, let's say. And so
Yeah.
you do get that calming effect, or otherwise we wouldn't do it. But then you get a
Hmm.
backlash and it actually depletes all the very neurotransmitters we really need to help us to feel better. But we wouldn't be doing any of these things if they didn't initially have that effect we're looking for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And so, a lot of that kind of comes back to that seeking
Mm-hmm.
attachment, right?
And you connect
You
with
know,
other people who are doing it too. You feel some sort of connection
totally.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of times attachment issues and codependency and toxic relationships go really hand in hand with trauma and with substance use disorders. So many of my clients, and again, right, myself, there's that connection there of just looking for somebody and something to
Yes.
hold on to, right? When you feel like you're drowning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just looking for something to hold on to, somebody or something to be that life raft in it. But usually we look for that in these really maladaptive places, right?
Yeah.
And so a big part of recovery is okay, so how do we start to form healthy attachment? Right?
Right.
What does that look like? How do we start to recognize that and seek that out in places where, people are capable of giving that to us, right? Which can be really scary and difficult and daunting in the beginning.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
And one
and
of
so
those
that's
is
where for me,
therapy, right? One of those is going to see someone
totally.
like you, therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So for many people, that can be kind of that first experience of really healthy attachment and attunement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the therapeutic relationship is so important, right? I mean, I value my connection and my relationship with my clients so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of this is a total aside, guys, but I got to tell this kind of funny story.
Mm.
So I'm in 11 months of not drinking, and Lisa and my sister Donna and Lisa's business partner and best friend Erica and Kylie, my niece, Lisa's daughter, are all going to
Mhm.
Italy. And in my dealing with clients, everybody's terrified of traveling, especially to Europe, without
Yeah.
drinking.
Yeah.
And so these guys called me and like, hey, you want to go to Italy with us? A girls' trip. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And then I thought, wait a minute, let me think about who I'm going with here. I'm
Yeah.
going with supportive, loving family. And Lisa, is not drinking. I knew Erica really didn't. I know Donna doesn't, around with you, and she doesn't hardly drink anymore. So I was
Hmm.
like, of all the opportunities to go to Europe, this is amazing. And so we went, and it was such a, in so many ways, it was just so good. It was good for our relationship, like getting to
Yeah.
see you in a whole nother light, traveling in a safe space with safe people, and
Hmm.
experiencing Italy, Venice specifically, without
The
substances. And
best.
yeah, it was amazing. It was such an eye opening experience and the best. But I'll tell you this funny little story. So
Mm.
we took a side tour to the Dolomites. Beautiful, really incredible. And we stopped at a little snack shop because it was a long drive. and everybody got something to drink and something to eat. And I got this can, and I was very focused on if it had sugar in it or not. So I'm reading these ingredients in Italian, not paying attention to the fact that it says control on the front of the can. So we all get into the van, and Lisa's actually sitting behind me, and I'm sitting next to my sister. And I take a swig of this drink, and I hadn't drank in 11 months. And I'm like, oh, that tastes weird. It's very weird soda. And then I took another sip, and whoosh, it went right to my head. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah.
alcohol. And I'm like doing all this in my head. I'm not talking out loud. But
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, being very observant, is like, what's going on? And I'm like, I just drank alcohol. And like she switched from my niece to like therapist hat on. Okay, let's talk about intent here. And it was like, I highly recommend traveling with a therapist, guys, because it's incredible.
Yeah, if you got one of those in your family, right, they're helpful
Yeah,
to
if you
have
got that, it's
around.
the way to go. And I thought, you know what, you're right. I didn't intend to. And the beautiful thing was, it was such a gift. And you said that, you're like, what's the gift in this? Because we processed it over the next few days.
Yeah,
And I said, the gift is I didn't want that feeling. I didn't like that very
yeah,
feeling I used to look for in my first few
right.
sips of alcohol. And I literally was looking at my watch. I'm like, okay, this takes about 20 to 30 minutes to dissipate. But internally in my head, before anybody even knew, I was like, I could have drank it, right? Nobody would have known, but I would have
Right.
known. And that's when I really knew I was so done with alcohol. And so it really
Yeah.
turned to be such a good gift. But when I saw you, I just saw Lisa like all of a sudden in a different way, and the
Mm.
beauty and the compassion and the understanding. And you helped me so much to realize that was actually a big gift, and really increased my confidence in being a person who doesn't drink. And so I don't know if I ever told you how much grateful I am for that.
Mm.
And I plan to travel with them again because it was so much fun. We had the best time.
Definitely. Yeah. That was such an amazing trip. And thank you for sharing that experience and that memory. And, I'm so grateful that I was able to be there for you in that moment, right? In that experience of connection.
Yes.
And I knew exactly how that felt, right? Because I had a similar situation early in my own recovery of, right, like accidentally drinking
Yep.
something that I thought was, like iced tea. And meanwhile, it's like, got all this booze in it, and that shock and that, oh my gosh, and that panic, and right, but
Mm-hmm.
being able to have somebody that can say, hey, it's okay, right,
Yes.
you're okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's huge. That's huge.
it really
And to not
was.
have to feel like ashamed or embarrassed in that moment, right?
Yeah, and vulnerability, I've learned, kills
Yes,
shame. Getting it out there, talking about it
absolutely.
with trusted
Hmm.
individuals, people that you have connection with, all of that.
Yeah.
So I love my niece, guys, in case you can't tell, I'm very proud of her. So
Thank
what I
you, I love
love
you
is
too.
you took it even further, and now you do this. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. Trauma therapy yoga, like you
Trauma
call it,
informed yoga.
trauma
Yeah, yeah.
informed yoga. So can
Hmm.
you talk about what that is, how it helps, and what you do, what you're doing right now with that?
Yeah, so oh gosh, there's like a whole other piece, right, that we
Yeah,
could probably spend a whole nother segment talking
well, you
about.
can
But
come back.
all right, cool.
Yes.
So part of my story, my journey was also reconnecting to my physical body in a safe way, and not to spend too much time going into it. But obviously, as you know, I struggled with a lot of health issues. That very much played a big role
Hmm.
in my using substances. I have several different autoimmune disorders, and I live with chronic pain. And so that was another piece of why I looked for substances to medicate that. And so the experience of the psychological trauma, right, and then the physical trauma of being somebody, with medical issues, I was really disconnected from my body. My
Hmm.
body was not a safe place. My body was not a place where I wanted to be. Um, and so yoga was a huge part of my personal journey in reconnecting with my own body and learning how to make my body a safe place.
Mm.
I would say again, but I don't know that it ever was, right? So, um, so I was actually initially introduced to yoga by your oldest sister,
Ah,
my
Meredy.
aunt. Uh-huh. Yeah. Out in California when yoga really hadn't hit the East Coast yet. And she was like, yeah, there's people here doing this like cool new thing. I think you'd really like it. You got to check it out. and I didn't reconnect with yoga until into my recovery. When I was trying to figure out what like being in my own body looked like and trying to figure out how to just cope and deal and exist. Initially the type of yoga that I practiced was very much like the power yoga and vinyasa. And it was really about kind of finding what my limits were and gaining this sense of like empowerment over my body and trying to see like what could my body do, what could I do with this body of mine, and as it progressed I started to gain more and more appreciation for different styles of yoga that were a bit more gentler and were more focused on breath work, right, and meditation and learning how to just create some space and some stillness, and not being afraid to sit with myself anymore,
Yes.
right? Actually, like allowing all of that emotional junk,
Discomfort.
right?
Yes.
hmm
Yes.
Yeah, the emotional junk, the physical pain, right? Learning how to just allow it to be present and to sit with it and to breathe through it and to know that I was going to be okay. Um, and so yoga was a huge part of me learning how to do that. And there's a lot of research that speaks to the efficacy of yoga in healing from trauma in particular. Because of that brain body connection, because of the way that trauma manifests in our physical bodies, the way it gets kind of stored and held. So again, I could spend a
Yeah.
whole
In the
nother time
tissues.
kind of,
Right.
yeah, the issues in the tissues,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's a ton of research on there. If you followed any like Bessel van der Kolk's work
Yes.
or Gabor Mate, right? They talk so much about that mind body connection and the way that trauma shows up in the body. So, I have my own personal experience of knowing how healing yoga could be. And I wanted to be able to offer that to my clients as well. So I ended up finding a school that specifically taught trauma informed yoga for mental health clinicians. So I was
Hmm.
really, really fortunate. It's called the Sakala School. It's in Eatontown, New Jersey. And the woman who owns it and runs it is just wonderful. She's put so much into developing a really fantastic program that, again, is geared for mental health clinicians wanting to be able to offer yoga to their
Very
clients.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was really fortunate to find that school and to be able to take that program. It was a year-long program, and it was a lot of work.
I
And
remember.
and as part of that, there was a ton of personal reflection too, which was really wonderful. That for me, that just speaks to the fact that we're never done healing and growing. Right? There's always more. There's always another layer. Right?
And you're never too old. Take it from me.
Yeah,
About to turn 59. You're never too old to start this healing journey and to grow and to learn.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So now you are a certified trauma informed yoga instructor. And what does that look like in
Mhm.
your practice? And I think I heard you're now going to start offering workshops, and one's coming to Maryland, people.
Yes, yes. So, what it looks like in my practice is I've been doing some like classes, like small groups. I've been doing them kind of just as pop-ups, like once a month. I've got one coming up on the 23rd of this month, and so I'll offer them kind of monthly. Eventually, I'd like to do like a weekly class. Just have to work that into the schedule,
Hmm.
as well as offering that individually with clients. So I can do individual yoga sessions with a client where, it's just me and them, and I'm guiding them through some poses,
Nice.
and we're really focusing on that nervous system regulation, and being able to build those skills in a safe way. And as you mentioned, yeah, I'm looking to offer some more retreats. So a dear friend of mine, Randy Bradley Martin, and I partnered, and we're going to be offering a retreat in the spring. So our retreat business is called Body Wisdom Retreats.
Love it.
So if you follow us, yeah, exactly, right.
This is on
So much to see
Instagram,
about.
right? Body Wisdom.
Yes,
Okay.
Body
Body
Wisdom
Wisdom, people.
Retreats.
Okay.
hmm
Body Wisdom Retreats. Check it out.
Yeah, so Randy has a lot of specialization in sound healing, and energy work. And what's really cool is she's a music teacher, so she does a lot of what's called internal sound healing. So a lot of like using voice and using sound. which is really powerful stuff. So
Yeah.
being able to pair the internal sound healing with the trauma informed yoga, really helping people to be able to get some release and relief and go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I was just laughing because I never understood the Om in yoga, and then when I started to understand about vagal tone and the vagus nerve, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, there's a physiological reason for
Hmm.
doing that, So that,
Yes.
again, my science brain's like, oh, okay, now I like, now I want to
Now
do
I
that.
get it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
yeah, oh, I love, so you'll be combining that kind of thing. And do you know where
Mhm.
in Maryland yet, or should I just tell people to keep looking out for it?
Yeah, I can actually pull up the information for you. I should know that offhand, but
That's okay. I'll definitely have it in the show notes and my newsletter, so we can get back to that.
Yeah, so it's the Hallowwood Retreat Center in Frederick, Maryland.
Frederick, Maryland. Well, count me in. I
Yes.
want to be there. I already know that.
All right, great.
That'd be
So it's
so
April
cool.
11th to April 13th, but I will
Okay.
definitely share that info with you.
Perfect. Well, guys, as you can tell, we've just scratched the surface. We could talk for a long time. So I would love it
Hmm.
if you came back, Lisa, and with Erica, your partner, and that'll be a
Yeah,
lot of
that'd be
fun.
great.
Lisa, I always ask people this. So, what do you do to be sober fit? That could be mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, or all of them together. What is your favorite sober fit thing to do?
So, I mean, as we mentioned, obviously yoga, right, is huge for me. But the other really big thing is time in nature, right?
Yes.
So, where we were talking about like that seeking connection with other people, I think we're also as human beings like so in need of that connection to nature. So, for me, I am happiest when I'm in nature, out in the woods or in a body of water. So that's a huge part of what helps keep me sober fit.
Yeah, I love that. Noticing nature, being in nature. And again, there are a lot of studies about how that really affects
Hmm.
our brain and our feel good neurotransmitters in such a positive
Absolutely.
way. She literally
Yeah.
does like to climb trees, people. I know this.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Give me a good tree, and I'm so happy. I will get up there. I don't care how old I am. I'm still getting up there.
Yeah, I love that. The kid in you. Well, it has
Yes.
been so great to have you here. And I said we could
Yeah.
talk
Thank
forever,
you.
but I'm going to cut it short a little bit. But it was so great having you here. And I look forward to having you back. And thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on Sober Fit Life.
Thank you.
Have you ever Googled, am I an alcoholic? Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results in a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI.